Hello everyone, this is Mr. Marlowe, and I am going to walk through Lesson 13, Unit 5 in Code.org with you today. I'm going to go through this step by step, so we'll get through all of these things before the end of our recording, and there may be a couple, maybe do this in 2 or 3 parts depending on how long it takes to do it. But Lesson 13 is the first time we look at arrays using this in Unit 5 using the Code.org platform. So gives you a couple new vocabulary words here. You have a list and array. Basically, an array is the fancy name for a list. You have some new code that you have down here that we'll look at all of these things later. But first thing, we go ahead and click continue. We get a video next that shows you about arrays, and I recommend looking at that one. That's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and skip it though. And then the next thing we get into is our first array. So what it says here is arrays are like variables. So basically the way an array works is if we had something like a shopping list, which they use as an example in here, instead of making a dozen different variables for each item on the shopping list, we can put all of those things under one variable called list and put them inside of an array. So what it's asking us to do here is, following the format described above, create an array which contains the even numbers from 0 to 10. So up here it says this is what it should look like. So I'm going to go ahead and type in var. So it's the same way that we're setting in a variable, or that we set up a variable. And I'm going to call this my first array. And then I'm going to put the equal sign. Now here's where it gets different. I'm using the brackets. So these square brackets like that, I'm going to go ahead and type in, it said every, what did it say? Every even number from 0 to 10. So I have to separate everything by a comma. So I go 0, and then 2, and then 4, 6, 8, 10. So those are all my even numbers. And at the end of the line, after that last bracket, don't forget you have to put a semicolon there. And now so I've done that. So I make sure the array has a descriptive and meaningful name. Actually, instead of my first array, if I could say, I guess what they recommend is list of even numbers. That's fine, whatever you want to use, it doesn't really matter. Then it says use the console log to display the contents. So if I come up here, now instead of typing this out, even though I'm in text mode, I can still drag these blocks in and just drop it in there. And my console log message that I want to print out is my first array. So I'm going to do that without quotes. My first array, just like that. And then my error messages go away. I hit run. And then in my console log down here, you can see that I've got 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So the same thing that I had in my array is printed out just like that. What this looks like in blocks, if you were using blocks, which I may switch to blocks because I think they're a little easier to see. But same thing, we would drag that over there, and then we'd put all of the items into those spaces, and then my console log to print it out. So once you've done that, that's all there is to it. I go ahead and click finish and continue. And now it's going to take me to 4. And in 4, it says we want to add items to the list. So I'm going to go back, make sure I'm in blocks again here. So in our last exercise, we created the array. So now we're going to add items to our array on separate lines. So the word for that is appending. So to append something means to add or to join. So what we want to do, it says read the documentation for append item. If you wanted to do that, if you just hover over this, mouse over this, you can click on see examples, and it will show you the documentation for append. I'm not going to get into that. Create an empty array called odd numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, drag it over here, and I'm going to call it odd numbers. Oops, odd numbers spelled correctly. And then it says empty, so I'm going to leave this blank. But if I wanted to add something in here, I would just click on this little arrow button, and that would create space. To show you what that looks like in text, it's just variable odd numbers, and it's empty. So then it says use append item to add odd numbers 1 through 11 to your array. So here's our append item and my odd numbers. So I'm going to need one for 1, 2, or sorry, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. Okay, so all of these need to be added to the list, added to odd numbers. So I'm going to just copy that. I'm going to go down through here. I'm adding, oops, I copied list, wrong button. Copy that, and then I'm going to paste that into there, because I'm adding all these things in there. What I'm adding, I'm not adding a string, which is the default that it gives me for the F. What I'm going to add are odd numbers. So it says 1. So I don't need the quotes. Make sure you delete the quotes out of there. And I'm going to add 3. And then I'm going to add 5. Then I'm going to add 7. And then 9. And last, 11. So I've made an empty array called odd numbers. It's empty, has nothing in it. I've used the append items and added to the array odd numbers, the odd numbers 1 through 11. And then the next thing it wants me to do is use console log to confirm that my array is holding the correct values. So I'm going to grab a console log from here, and I'm going to do the same thing I did in the last one. I want it to print odd numbers. So I'm going to type odd numbers there, and then I'm going to run it. And I get, there you have it, my array called odd numbers has 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 in there. So there they all are. So I've started out with an empty array. I used append item to add a 1 to odd numbers, and it just adds them in order. So it starts out here. If you flip these around, let's say if I start off and if I could drag the 7, so I drag the 7 up there and I reset and I run that again, you can see it put the 7 in there first. So it goes in order. However you add them, it just keeps stacking them onto the end. There are ways to make it do, to put them in other places, but I'm not sure we get into that in this particular lesson. So that's done. Finish, continue on to the next one. I'm going to keep looking at my time here. I don't want to go over about 20 minutes per video. So another video, again, I recommend watching that one. That one's pretty good. It talks about some more on arrays. And then in 6, you probably should click continue. I just clicked up here because I've already done all these, so but you'll probably have to click continue. Okay, so accessing items in an array. An array is comprised of many locations. You can individually set or reference the information, so you can read through all that. The one thing that is tricky in here, or thing that you need to realize, is that in JavaScript arrays are 0 indexed, which means that the first number or first string or first thing in the array is at the 0 position, and then the second one is in the 1 position, and the third one is in the 2 position, and so on. So that's what you have to remember if you're trying to go back and pull an individual piece out of an array. You have to remember that it's going to be where it is plus or minus 1 because you're starting at 0. So what this is doing is it's telling us how to access items in the array by the index number. So that's the position. Index is the position that it holds in the array. So what it says is do this. It's given me some starter code. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in an array called my array. And it says use a console log to display the first item, the last item, and the number 5 from the array. So if I take my console logs, and again, actually, let me switch to blocks again here. If I take my console logs and I drag them, it doesn't matter where you put them. These are just comment blocks. It wants me to do 3 things, so I'm going to go ahead and drag 3 console logs. It wants me to print out the first item in the array. So if you look up at the thing here, it tells you how to do it. So you type in my array, because that's the name of the array. Then we use the brackets. So I put in a bracket here. Oops, sorry, square bracket, not a curly bracket. And then I want the first item. So remember, the first item is 0. So I'm going to put a 0 there. So what it's telling me is to print out the thing in the 0 index of my array. So for these other ones, it's going to be a similar thing. Oops, I think oh yeah, it changed it to an array. There we go. Okay, so then same thing. My array. Now this may be for you, it may default to text, because I think it did on mine, but you can do this in text. It's probably easier, I think. Then it says the last item in the array. So for now, I think what we're going to do, instead of, there's another way to do this, but we're just going to say that this is the last item must be in slot 9, right? Because this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think it should be 9. So because it's whatever that is, because this is just sequentially 1 through 10, so that must be the 9th slot is what I'm guessing. And then the next one, it says we want to print what is in position 5. So put my brackets in there, and I'm going to say position 5. And then that's all I have to do. I hit run, and I come down here and take a look at my console log. And what I get in console log, it says 1, 10, and 6. So 1 is indeed the first item in my array. 10 is the last item in my array in position 9, which is the trick. And then in position 5 in my array apparently is the number 6. So if I count this, I say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and indeed 6 is in the 5th position, remembering that it's 0 indexed. So I'm starting out with 0. So that's all I have to do there. I hit finish and go to continue. And next one, I'm in 7, is going to have me do some index practice. So I think, if I recall, this might be the same as the last ones. So this just says use console log and array, so starter code is provided. It's called my numbers. It's got these 3, 2, 5, 7, 4 in an array, and it says use the console log and array indexes to write the contents of my numbers to the screen in order as shown to the right. So I have to order them. So what I should be doing here is using console log, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things there. So I'm going to need 5 console log statements. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then what I want to print in there, or if I go back to show blocks, so to make it a little easier for you to read, what I want to put in here is that array called my numbers. So my numbers, I want to put my square brackets in there, and I want to do them in order. So the lowest number there is a 2. That is in the 1 slot, because this is in the 0 slot, this is in the 2 or the 1 slot, so I'm going to say 1. And then I'm just going to go ahead and copy this right there, and I'm just going to start pasting that in these others, because the only thing what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be changing what's in the square brackets for the rest of these, but they're all going to be the same except for the number in the brackets. So I'll get rid of that, and then last one, let me do it that way. There we go, that works. Okay, so 2 was the lowest number, 3 is the next lowest number, but 3 is in the 0 slot, so I'm just going to say 0. The next highest number is 4. So 4, if I say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is actually in the 4 slot. So I'm going to do that. And then the next number is 5, which is this is 0, 1, 2. 5 looks like it's in the 2 slot. And then the last number is 7, the highest number. So I go 0, 1, 2, 3. That looks like 7 is in the 3 slot. So I say 3. And then I go ahead and run it, and hopefully if I did it right, it should print those numbers in order starting with 2. And there we have it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. So they were in order. This is just practice to make sure that you remember that we're 0 indexing or starting with a 0 for each of these positions in an array. So I go ahead and hit finish, continue. And then the next one, 8, looks like it's another video, and there it is. And this is part 3, so you could watch that as well if you wanted to. The videos in this one are pretty helpful in explaining that, or explaining how the arrays work. So this next part, we're setting values by index, and what this is telling us is that each location can be treated like its own variable. So we're just using what this bracket notation is what they call it. So just like variables, we can assign the value of a specific location in an array using the assignment operator or the equal sign. So for example, they show you here that if we have something in my first array in the position 0, if we set it to 10, it's going to change whatever's in that spot to 10. So starter code is provided, create an array, that creates an array of zeros and ones. Set all of the values in this array to be 0. Use indexes in the assignment operator to set them all to 0. Check the output with console log. So right now it has a variable called array of bits, and it's got 1000100, so just a bunch of them there. And then the first thing it does is it's printing out before the changes and then after the changes, and you're putting your assignment commands right below or somewhere near the comment there. So if I go back to my blocks, what we're doing is we're going to do just like it did here. We're saying my first array and then that, so we can use this one right here, this access list item. So I'm going to take that one, and I'm going to need, and no, actually, wait, it's not going to let me. I'm going to have to do it this way. I'm going to have to go use this thing first. So this is my assign a variable, and I need to take out the one. So it looks like I've got 1, 2, 3 ones in there. So I'm going to need 3 of those, 1, 2, and 3. And then as the X, what I'm going to put is this access list item. And right now it just says list. I'm going to have to change that, and it's going to let me drop that in there just like that. If we're using blocks, it might be easier to type this one, I don't know. So my list in this case is called array of bits, so I'm just going to copy that and I'm going to paste it into here. And what I'm doing is I want to change them all the change all the ones to zeros. So I know all these are going to be zeros. Now I just have to figure out where are the ones. So I have a 1 in the 0 position, which is what I have here, so that's perfect. This one is if this is 0, 1, 2, 3, it looks like the 3 position, so I want to do that. Or no, sorry, wait, never mind, that's not where I do that. You do it right here in the brackets. Almost messed that up. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I have one in the 8 position. So 0, 3, and 8. So what I should get now is it'll print first this, because that's what it says here, or console log that. It'll say the array before changes, and it'll say that. Then I've changed some of the positions, some of the numbers in these 3 positions here, and then I print it out again after the changes. So let me run it and then see if I did it correctly, and I did. So you can see what it says here is before I had the 100100010, and now I've made the changes and I've got all zeros. So remember, it's going in sequential order. So the first thing, variable array of bits, consists of those numbers. It prints those numbers out. I changed 3 of them, and then it prints out what it is after the changes. Okay, so that is that one. And if let's see, I'm sitting on 18 minutes here, so I'll do a couple more of these. I go to continue, finish and continue, and now I'm on 10. So now we're doing some arithmetic with these numbers. So it says you can reference locations in arrays in arithmetic expressions just like you might a variable, so the exact same way that we would use a variable. So in this case, if I'm adding what's in the 0 position plus what's in the 1 position, it gives us some starter code. It has an empty array. It adds random numbers to it. So it's adding random numbers to my array. And then what it wants us to do is add a variable to your program to hold the sum of the array values. So assign the value to the variable, assign the value of the variable to the sum of the 3 array values. So, and then use a console log to make sure. So my console log is already there to make sure I've correctly calculated. So it shows my numbers. So what we want to do is we want to add number to find a sum, and then we want to add code to find a sum, and then add code to print it. So what I want to do is do some math, And remember, I want to change those variable numbers. So the first thing I'm going to do is, or sorry, I don't want to change them. I want to make it look like this, one up here. So I'm going to make one. I'm going to keep it in text because I think that's going to be easier. I think. No, let's do it this way. I'll do it in blocks. So I'm going to have to make a new variable called sum. So I'm going to take it over here, and then I'm going to call this variable, instead of x, I'm going to call it sum. Let me go into blocks. Oh wait, I need to correct an error first. Let me actually get rid of that, and then go to blocks. Show blocks. Okay, so I want to make a new variable called sum. I'm going to put it here. And then the sum is going to be equal to a bunch of pluses. So I'm going to take my pluses, and then I need to add 3 things, it looks like, because I have 3 numbers. So I'm going to take another, oops, not that one. I'm going to take another plus sign and put it there to give myself 3 spaces. So what I want to do is I want to add what's in the 0 position with what's in the 1 position with what is in the 2 position, because I'll have 0, 1, and 2. So I can do that if I come here to my list item thing here. I put that there. I put that there. And I put that there because I've got 3 things. I want to copy my array name and replace that with list, because I'm using my array called my numbers. And then I'm using what is going to be in the 0, 1, and 2 position. So I got the 0, the 1, and the 2 position. So it's going to add all of those numbers together. And now I want to console log the sum. So if we go into console log, it says add code here to print your sum. So what I'm going to do, I can do this a couple different ways. If I want to do it the fancy way, I could take an addition thing here, and I could say the sum is that, and then I could just say sum, because that's my variable name, and then my errors go away. So what I've got happening here is I've got a variable called my numbers that's set to an empty array. I take 3 random numbers and add them to the array by appending them. I've got a new variable called sum, and that is going to consist of what's in the 0, 1, and 2 positions of my array. And then I'm console logging what those numbers actually are, so that after, because they're random right here, I don't know what they are. So it's going to show what they are, and then it's going to tell you what the sum of those random numbers are. So I should go ahead and run it, my console log. So it says here that my random numbers ended up being 8, 8, and 5. And if 8, 8, and 5 added together is 21, then I think I did it right. So I've got 8 and 8 is 16, plus 5 is 21. So it looks like I did it right. So that's all you have to do for this one. And then I click, let's double check, make sure. Yep, yes, there we go. Okay, so that's all I have to do. Finish, continue, and I got 23 minutes, so we'll do a couple more. We'll do 7 more minutes worth of stuff. So we'll get to 11. We might be able to do this one in 3 videos, because we're going along pretty quickly here. So reassigning array values. So we know how we can find the location of an array, and we know how we can treat it identically to a variable. So we use it exactly like we do a variable. And this one, what we're doing is we're reassigning array values. So it works the same way as the math. If we look here, we say we have something called my array, and then in position 2, we're going to make that equal to whatever's in position 2 plus 1. Now, I think we did this before, where we did the increase notation, the plus plus. You can do that the same way. So in this case, we're saying whatever is in position 8 in our array, we are going to increase it by 1. So the plus plus works the same way that any other math function does. So let me switch to blocks here. So it says add code to the program that increases the value stored at each location in the array by 1. Use console log to confirm that we've done it properly. So right here what you've got is console log, you've got the before numbers, and then you've got the after numbers. So I want to increase each of these by 1. So I'm going to do it the same way using my x. If I take my x and do 3 of those, because, oops, not that one. My declaring a variable, so I'm going to do that 3 times. Then I'm going to use my access list item. So I'm going to take 3 of those because that's going to be my first thing there. And then I'm going to go to my math. Now I think with the way the math functions work, it doesn't give you that plus plus, but if you wanted to hand type that in using the text, you could do that. I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way. Oops, that's not the way I wanted to do it. Do it this way by putting my plus here. This is a little longer. The code is for that is a little longer. And actually what I'll do is I'll do it both ways. I'll do one way and one the other. So I've got this one called my list numbers. We'll do that. We'll do that. And then I'm going to need that position here also. So if I'm going to have to take these and put those there. This access list item, we'll do that there, and it's going to be the same thing. And then I'm messing with position 0 here, and then on the next one I'm going to do position 1, and then I'll manually type in position 2. So what you can see here is I'm making my number 0 equal to my number 0 plus 1, and then my number's 1 equals to my number's 1 plus 1. And now if I go to my text, you can see there they are right there. So for the next one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it just like this, but I'm going to use the plus plus. So, and that's going to be position 2 that I'm using. So instead of typing in equals, the same thing, I just increment it by 1, and don't forget to put your semicolon after it. And this line of code here is exactly the same as these 2 lines of code here. You can see it's much shorter, takes a lot less time if you just use the plus plus increment. And then if you show blocks, that actually shows up in a block like this. But I'm not sure. I don't know how you get that out of one of these. There might be a way to do that, but that's what it looks like. So I click run, and then it's going to say, here's my console log. Let me drag it up here so you can see it. My original numbers were 6, 6, and 3 because they were random numbers, remember? And now the final numbers are 7, 7, and 4. So each one of those have been increased by 1, so it did what it was supposed to do. And I will go ahead and we'll try to do one more. We'll try to get 12 done. So so that worked. So I click finish and I click continue. And I'm on 12, and 12 is updating and assigning lists. So arrays can hold strings, believe it or not, in addition to numbers. So we'll do it the same exact way that we did before, but this time instead of putting in a number, we're going to use the quotes to put a string in there. So what this wants us to do is create an empty array, which we could actually, if we want, actually no, we can't. I was going to try to copy that, but that's an image, so I can't do that. But it says create an empty array, use append item to individually add strings to your array, forming a sentence of at least 5 words. So in their example they show here, it says this sentence is stored in an array, which is 6 words maybe. So let's try that out. I'm going to use the text version. So I'm just going to type in my sentence is going to be equal to an empty array, oops, and then always put a semicolon on there. And then I'm going to be appending items. And actually, instead of typing all that out, remember that's here. So I'm just going to drag those append items up there. And I need at least 5, it said. So I got 3, 4, and 5. And then I want to console log it. And I'm console logging this thing called my sentence. So type in my sentence, and that should be right? Yeah, maybe. I'm still getting an error. Oh, it hasn't been declared yet. I have to do it this way. I have to put the var in there. Okay, so in this case here, my sentence is the name of it. Oops, let me try to go back to blocks. My sentence is the name, so that replaces list in these cases here. Now right now if I printed this would work, but all it would say was F, 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 F. So because these are strings, it gives you by default the quotes. So I want to do one that says this sentence is stored in an array. So I can say this sentence is, and I'm running out, stored, and I'll just say array. Okay, so now we run this, and it should console log it. There it goes. Inside the array, it's telling us this sentence is stored array. So the same 5 words that I had up here are now inside the array. And that's all that there is for 12. I'm going to go ahead and pause here and do another video in a little bit on the rest of lesson 13. So probably not the rest. We may get to lesson 13 part 13, and then probably I'll go through about probably to 20, because 20 starts a project. So I'll probably try to do 13 through 19 in the next one, and then 20 through 29 in the last video. So we'll maybe have 3 videos worth here today. But that's all for now. Be sure to check out the next one if you want the rest of lesson 13, unit 5.